You're listening to the Covenant Church podcast. We hope this message is encouraging, inspiring, and that it challenges you to take your next step with Jesus. Thanks for listening. Now, let's check it out.
Have you ever said to yourself, I am not satisfied with whatever it is, with whatever habit that is, and that you might say, I've got to do something differently. I need to create a new habit. The beginning of January, probably most of us had some type of moment like that. It's like, you know what? I need to do something different this year. A couple years ago, Branson had this similar type thing for him. A couple years ago, I just wasn't satisfied with what I was doing for exercise. I just wasn't getting stronger. And so I decided I have got to do something different. So I changed. And I changed to something that was a lot harder. A lot more painful, and it continues to be harder and it continues to be painful, but I know I've gotten a lot stronger. And so I had to change that habit. Branson defined the habits like this. If you don't like where you are at the moment, you can change it and begin a new habit. So if you don't like where you are, it's just right. You can start today. And you just go, I don't like this. I need to change. I need to do something differently. You can do that. Some say that it takes 21 days, right, to create a new habit. Maybe you've heard that before. I don't know if that's true. It could be 19 days. It could be 20. It could be 22 days. It doesn't matter how many days. It's the fact that you can actually start a new habit. And that's what we sometimes what we need to do. And this series is on habits and changing some of our habits. And today, the title of the message is The Habit of Gathering Together. And so this passage of scripture that I want to read comes out of Hebrews 10. And it really is all about the habit of gathering together. And you'll, as I read it, you'll begin to see how powerful that is. So Hebrews 10, 19 through 25. Therefore, brothers, since we have confidence to enter the most holy place by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way opened for us through the curtain, that is his body. And since we have a great priest over the house of God, let us draw near to God with a sincere heart and with the full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled to cleanse us from a guilty conscience, and having our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who is promised is faithful. And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds. Let us not give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but let us encourage one another, in all the more as you see the day approaching. Now, the book of Hebrews is written to Jewish Christians. So they're Jewish, but they've converted to Jesus and became Jesus followers. So they still have their Jewish foundation, and they're Jewish believers living in Rome. And he's writing to them because they're coming under an enormous amount of pressure to basically reject Jesus and to fall back onto their Jewish laws and their Jewish religion. And so they're under an enormous amount of pressure. And he's writing to them and he's reminding them a couple of different things. He's reminding them, number one, that Jesus Christ is the absolute supreme. That there only is going to be real life in Jesus Christ. And that Jesus is the totally sufficient revealer and mediator of God's grace. Look, you're not going to find God's grace when you fall back and you try to live by the law. So don't give up. Don't give up your faith. Don't give up meeting together. You need to continue on in your faith. Continue on in your trust. Continue on in being with each other and encourage one another. Now, another aspect of the Jewish foundation that they have is that they were very community oriented. And so people would be willing to ignore their own personal need for the need of the whole. So that's just who they are. That's just their nature, that they weren't individualistic, but they were more concerned about the whole, so they were willing to give up and sacrifice things for themselves. Now, to bridge this to us today, it's a very different culture that we live in, because we live in a very individualistic culture and a very isolating culture. And of course, in the last 11 months, we've isolated even more. I mean, it's just the way it is right now. It's just how our culture is. But even before we went into this pandemic, we were isolating already. You know, on my phone, when I get a phone call and it's programmed to spot, and it'll say potential spam. It's like, I don't have to answer that. It's already filtering my calls. And then I filter them even more because I'll just let them go to voicemail and figure, well, if they really want to talk to me, they'll leave a message and I'll call them back. I noticed today, and some people don't even set up their voicemail. So you can't even leave a message. And so it's like, hey, that's perfect. I mean, that's perfect isolation right there. It was so funny to call somebody this morning and it's like, they haven't set up voicemail. And so what we would prefer, obviously, is a text, and this is kind of how we're going at it. And so, even at home, when I hear the doorbell and I'm not expecting somebody, it's like, why are they ringing my doorbell, right? I mean, it's just, we're already just kind of tending toward this isolation, and it's comfortable for us, and it's just kind of how we're going. And so to read this passage and to see what the instruction is, how it's so counter to where we are, we have to work at it. It means it's going to require us to do some work to be able to overcome kind of this isolation, to overcome the way our culture and our society is going. So he gives some let us statements. So I'm just going to kind of read those again. It says, let us together draw near to God with a sincere heart. It's this let us togetherness. Let us together hold to the hope we profess. Let us together spur and encourage each other. And let us together not give up the habit of meeting together. So my principle is simply this: as followers of Christ, we need each other to finish our lives well with Jesus. We need each other, especially as we see the day approaching. We just need, the body needs each other. We need to be able to see and know and be known. Now, I realize this principle isn't astounding, and yet I think it's profound because it's so counter to the way we live today. It's almost opposite to the way we live, or the way we want to live today. So what I want to talk about is, why do we need each other to finish well? Why do we need each other to finish this journey, to finish well, meaning to grow to maturity in our faith, in our relationship with Christ? Why do we need each other? We need each other to finish well because we need spurring and encouragement to love and to do good deeds. We need spurring to be able to do that. Verse 24, and let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds. I love that word spur. So what it really means, it means to stimulate. It means to irritate. Like a little brother to a big sister. No, it means to irritate. It means to incite. It means to put pressure. And of course, in a good way, right? Maybe not always in a good way, but it's that encouragement, it's that irritating that we actually need in our lives. Don't you love that when you have people in your life that actually encourage you to do more than you ever thought you could do by yourself? We need that type of people. We need people like that in our lives to encourage us. And they may even irritate you. They may even make you mad and stimulate you. And I think of the irritating as like you pour chocolate sauce in the milk, right? And it just drops to the bottom. You got to take your spoon and you spoon it. You irritate the milk, and the chocolate sauce just kind of melts into the milk, and you actually have something instead of just dropping to the bottom. But it needs irritating. We're kind of like that. We need to be irritated. So as I told you, I wanted to do something different for exercise. So I started a group here a couple years ago to work out. We're meeting and we were working out, and some of the guys who started coming lived pretty far away, so they kind of dropped out, and it got down to just a couple of guys. And the problem was we would not irritate each other. And so we actually started compromising. And so instead of doing 20 push-ups, we would say, hey, let's just do 5. 5 will be good enough. Instead of like saying, let's run 4 laps around the parking lot, we said, hey, let's just do 1. 1 will be good enough, right? We just stopped irritating each other. And so we compromised. And then I heard about another group in town that was meeting at the same time, and they were actually doing a better job of spurring, of irritating. And so we kind of went in and joined in with them. And it made all the difference in the world. I mean, they did irritate us. They did stimulate us. They did encourage us. And the results was we started getting stronger. And they were spurred on. And it works. And it works. But we needed to get with those guys to be irritated and to be spurred on. So the writer is declaring here that to love others well, we need that type of encouragement. To love others well, we need encouragement. We need encouragement to move past just what is comfortable and easy. If we just settle for the comfortable and easy, we'll never get stronger. We'll never move past that. We need encouragement to get our eyes off of ourselves and onto others. Actually, to be in community and to be focused on others. We need encouragement to do that. We need encouragement to love and to do good deeds, to do good works. Many of you were involved last year when we did the Night to Shine. And it was an incredible night. And many of you were encouraged to serve and serve. And so what a lot of the guys did is they went and rented tuxes to be able to, because it's a formal affair, right? So guys went and rented tuxes so they could be dates. And ladies wore these beautiful gowns. And we served and we came together. And it was awesome to be a part of something so much bigger than ourselves. But it was because we came together and we were willing to sacrifice, and we were willing to work, and we were able to do that. And it was an incredible night. Now in the church today, we have a kind of the good and the bad of where we are right now in 2021. The good and the bad is that we can come to church, we can watch online, we get great biblical teaching. Branson teaches us most of the time. We can get great biblical teaching. We can watch 10 sermons a day online if we wanted. We could follow whoever. And we could probably go back and get all of Billy Graham's messages. I mean, we can get anything online. And we can consume it, we can watch it, we can take it in. And good biblical teaching is critical. So we have to have it. So I'm not against it, right? So just listen to me. I'm not against it. It's critical. But we miss the one another that this verse 24, talks about. We miss the one another. And the one another simply means that as followers of Jesus, we've got to interact with each other. And if we're just in a passive place, we're just receiving, we never get to interact. In Matthew 18, Jesus is teaching his disciples, and there's this interaction that Jesus is teaching them about that when you're in community with one another, that at times you're going to have to go and you have a relationship with people. You're going to have to go and deal with other people's issues. You may have to go and confront them and say, hey, man, what you're doing is not right. And Jesus is saying that you're going to have, disciples, you're going to have to do this. Now, take a step back and you look at it from maybe 5,000 feet, 30,000 feet, whatever 1,000 feet you want to use. But what you see is that what Jesus is really talking about is that they're together, that they're with one another. Jesus is just assuming that that would be the case. I think of the Lord's Prayer. So in Matthew 6, Jesus is teaching the disciples how to pray. And he tells them now, he's teaching them, when you pray like this, Father, forgive us of our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Jesus assumed that we would have to interact with people and that we would actually have to forgive. And in fact, he's saying this is pretty important. Now, if you're just passive, you're not involved in people's lives, you won't have to forgive anybody because you're not involved in someone's life. But when you get involved in someone's life, the potential for offense, the potential for people to hurt our feelings, the potential for that is there. And it's actually something good for us to have to work through. As we work through it, it makes us stronger. It makes us stronger in our faith, makes us stronger and we mature. Our growth doesn't get stunted. They're good and necessary things that we need. Now, I know for me, it just our right now, what we like to do is rescue people. We like to rescue them so they don't have to go through that. And I know as a parent, I think I probably rescued my kids too many times. And I didn't let them struggle enough. And I would just rescue them. And I think that's just kind of where we are today. I know you've probably heard this illustration before, but I think it really applies and I really like it. Is the little boy was walking home from school one day. It was in the springtime. And he walks by a tree and he sees this leaf and sees the leaf shaking a little bit. And he looks at it closer and he sees a cocoon kind of hanging down. And he goes, that's, as kids would do, man, that's pretty cool. I want to look at that a little bit closer. So he goes up, gets closer, look at it and sees right at the top, there's a little hole. And he look inside, he can see that there's a butterfly in there. So he decides, hey, I know what I can do. I can help this butterfly. So he takes his little pocket knife out and he cuts open that cocoon, right? And he opens it up and the butterfly falls out and it doesn't live. And he's like, why? And the reason is because it's in the struggle. This is the way God designed it. Isn't this cool? God designed it. It's in the struggle and getting out of the cocoon that the wings actually get strong enough for it to fly and for it to live. And so that's kind of like we try to rescue. We won't lean into the hard things. We want to avoid them. And so when we avoid them, we just begin to isolate and we don't get around people. In Matthew 18, Jesus continues that teaching of the disciples. In verse 20, he concludes it with this: where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am with them. Now, of course, again, it's in being together. And of course, the Holy Spirit is with them individually, but there's something dynamic that takes place when 2 or 3 are gathered. And now we have to interact, we have to talk, and we have to deal with each other. And that's where strength and power, I think, in our lives comes from. I lead a group on Thursday afternoons, and we call it Retired Men. I'm the youngest of the group, but it's such a great group of guys, and we've had so many answers of prayer in this group, and we've had so many people being healed and being transformed. And when the men come and they get honest, right? And they just really begin to pour out their hearts. Man, that's when the Lord just comes in and they're honest with us and with each other. And that's when there's power and things begin to happen. Now, it's an interesting group because some of these men are, one guy's 90. Others, his wife has had a heart transplant. So they can't come in the room physically. So we have some guys that show up physically. We have some guys that show up on Zoom. And we melt it together and we're one group. Now, it was weird at the beginning and it was hard to do, but you know what? We figured it out. And it is an awesome group of men. And like I said, we have some joining by Zoom, some in the room, and we're together though. We're that iron sharpening iron together. And it works. It's incredible how well it works, but we have to meet together. We can't give up the habit of meeting together. Is it ideal? No. I'd rather have everybody in the room. Is it ideal for us to wear masks and as a communicator and I can't see your faces? It drives me crazy. You know, I can see eyes and no, we want to see each other. We want to know each other. We need each other. So we make it work. We make it work. Now, we need each other to finish well because number 2, isolation from people will lead us further away from our relationship with Jesus. It isolates us. It keeps us further and further away. The word for meeting together simply means worship service. It means worship and instruction. Don't give up the habit of worship and instruction. I mean community, coming together for worship and instruction. And the point is not leaving the gathering. The point is failing to attend its gathering. So don't give up the habit of failing to attend. We're needed together. Now, he says the day, when the day, just to highlight, kind of just so you understand what that is, that's the day when Jesus will come back for his church, for his followers. And just suffice it to say, we don't know when that's going to be. We just know today we're one day closer, right? We're one day closer than yesterday that he is going to return. And that the church needs to be seen being together, and we need to be together all the more until he comes. Because we need to get stronger and stronger. Our faith, our witness needs to get more powerful, and our faith needs to get stronger. Until Jesus comes, whenever that is. And we look forward to that day. For sure, we look forward to that day. But the nearness of Christ is coming should motivate us. It should motivate us to, I need to be with others. I need to grow in my faith. Now, there's at least 2 forces working against all of us. At least 2. There's probably more. But there's at least 2 forces that work against us. One, when we're isolated and we're just alone, is that we get into our own heads. Thank you, Lewis. We get into our own heads and we start thinking we know what is right and we know the way it should be and we know this and we know that. And we have nobody to reflect back and say, you know, that's really kind of crazy thinking. Well, you may not say it that way, but you might say, well, you might want to think about it this other way, right? You might want to not, you might have some other information you might want to think about. But when we're just isolated, the enemy is that we're just in our own heads. And sometimes when we're in our own heads without someone to reflect back to, leads to trouble. And another enemy that we have is we actually have an enemy. And the Bible calls him Satan. And he loves nothing more to isolate and separate us. He loves nothing more to get us isolated and to separate us. And when we're isolated, I call this is when he eats our lunch. This is when we get tempted beyond what we can, and we don't know how to escape it. I mean, this is when he comes in to kill and destroy. That's his goal, to kill and destroy. He doesn't need to take credit for this pandemic. He just uses it, right? He just exploits it to the fullest. He doesn't take credit for it. Why? He doesn't need to. But he exploits it in our lives. So isolation to me is one of those things that is very, very bad. And it hurts us a lot. And I have a quote from Dr. Henry Cloud that I've used before. I love it. Dr. Henry Cloud is a Christian psychologist in Southern California, and he's been seeing patients for years and years and years. And he wrote a book called Boundaries, which is a tremendous book. If you've not read it, I encourage you to read that book. But he said in another book, he said, nearly every emotional issue, from depression to addiction, has isolation at its core or close to it. So this is not us. This is a Christian psychologist dealing with people day in and day out for years. Nearly every emotional issue, from depression to addiction, has isolation at its core or close to it. So we get in our own heads, we get separated, we get isolated. We start thinking things, that we normally would not. And this happened, I watched this play out when last March we went into our lockdowns all over the country. And my mom had just moved into an independent living facility in San Diego. She will be, in fact, 90 this coming Tuesday. But she got moved into this facility, and then about 8 months later, they go into this lockdown. And she was in, and if you've watched California, they went into a much harder lockdown than we did. And her facility locked down. She could not leave. And if she left, she was under the threat of having to go into a 14-day quarantine in her home. I mean, in her little tiny apartment. And so she was getting stir crazy. She had doctor's appointments that she wouldn't go to because she needed to go, but she wouldn't do it because she was afraid that when she came back, 14 days, and she just couldn't do it. And I'd talk to her on the phone, and she was just getting a little more depressed. And finally I said, Mom, buy a plane ticket and come out here. And you'll have a little more freedom, and you can wear a mask, but you can have freedom. And so finally, after 14 weeks, she decided she was going to come out. And she came out in the middle of June. She stayed with us for 3 weeks. I was able to take her to a couple ladies groups, and where she could just talk and be herself. And that lifted her spirits so much. She went to my brother's in Colorado for a couple more weeks, and by the time she finally got back to her place, they were starting to lessen the restrictions a little bit. But she was stir crazy, and she needed to get out of there. That's the effect. That's how tough isolation is on human beings. So what do we do? What are some steps that we can take into communities to get both instruction and to be known and to know others? How do we create a habit or a custom of meeting together for community instruction in the midst of this time that we're in? So I have some ideas. So I got 3 ideas on that. Number 1, we have to fully grasp the value of it. We have to fully grasp the value that for your own good, for your own growth and the growth of others that work together, that you and I have to find a way to gather for community and instruction, not just passively, but actively, to be involved with others. We have to really believe that value, grasp that value. Secondly, I think, don't settle that this is as good as it can be right now. Don't just settle for, well, this is, we're in the middle of this, so this is all I can do. Don't settle for that, because actually at Covenant, we have some ways to go beyond that. And then the third one is don't excuse online or Zoom meetings. Don't excuse online or Zoom meetings. If some people would say, well, if I can't come in person, I'm just not going to come. And so they just excuse. So what that does is it hurts them, because they're just isolating more and more. And so I get Zoom weary too. It's like another Zoom meeting. Yeah, it's going to just be another Zoom meeting. And we've kind of figured out how to set up the computer, and you pull people in and become one cohesive group. It actually can be done. And so don't excuse them. And so we have many opportunities here at Covenant Church, and that are what we call kind of the hybrid. In essence, you can be in the room or you can join by Zoom. And in fact, we're crazy enough that in January, we actually started this thing called the Covenant Institute. And the growth track are just classes that actually have instruction, and classes that part of instruction, and we move into small groups, whether in the room or on Zoom. Now, if it meets on Tuesday nights from 6:30 to 8 in this room, so there's social distancing can happen in this room. But you can also join by Zoom, and we put you into Zoom groups. And is it the best? Is it ideal? No, but it works. It works. We have a leadership track that meets on Wednesday nights. And on Wednesday, well, the Tuesday night one, we're going to start a week from Tuesday. We're going to start a new module, and it's going to be about the 6 covenants of the Old Testament, to understand those so you can understand the new covenant, the New Testament. This is going to be a really good and really powerful growth, interaction opportunity for you to do that. Also, on Wednesday night, we have a leadership track. And the leadership track is set up the same way in the room, online, put you into Zoom groups. And we're going to be dealing with, in that, understanding the 8 pictures or portraits of God in the Bible. Understanding him not only as a father, but as a judge, as a king, as a priest. And these are going to be really good. And that's on Wednesday nights from 6:30 to 8 in the room or by Zoom. Either way, you can do that. You can join us. We have some other groups that are both combination in the room and by Zoom. And so I want to take advantage of that. There's a ladies group that meets Tuesday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 8:45, strictly Zoom. And it's a prayer group. They're just praying. There's some men's groups on Wednesday morning, 6:30 to 7:30. Again, hybrid, in the room, online. My older men on Thursday afternoon, in the room, online. We have others like that. So the last fill-in that I have is that to get connected, just text growth. So, we have this new texting number. And so I'm going to invite you to write in growth on the last fill-in. And if you want to take advantage of the opportunities that we have, you go, okay, I got to get in some type of fellowship. I need to stop isolating. I need to get connected. Just text growth to us, and we'll get a hold of you in the next couple of days. And we'll help you to find that place where you can connect.
For service times, to learn more about us, or to stay connected, check out covenant.cc or follow us on Facebook or Instagram. We hope to see you soon.